Here with our live and continuing coverage of that massive tragedy there in Balasore district of Odisha near the Bahanaga Bazar railway station, where the Coromandel Express, which goes from Kolkata to Chennai, derailed and collided with the Yashwantpur, the Bangalore to Kolkata train that was passing by nearby there. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has visited the accident site, took a stock of the situation there at the accident site, at that massive accident site where the mangled bogies of both the trains and a goods train are scattered all over. Rescue operations are over at that spot, which means that those trapped in those mangled bogies have all been rescued. The focus now is on those injured who are in hospitals across the area, several critically injured. Remember, the death toll over 260 as confirmed by officials there. It could be much, much higher. Up to 900 people, we believe, are injured, and several of them in a critical state at hospitals all around there. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visiting one of those hospitals there. Those are live pictures that are coming from Balasore district there near the accident site. We're not sure exactly which hospital that is, possibly the one at Balasore itself, which is the district headquarters. There, Prime Minister Modi reaching there, going to meet several of those who are injured. Remember, several of those injured could have been from unreserved compartments of the trains, families of migrant workers, others who are traveling from large parts in Bihar, northeast of the country, as well as West Bengal towards the south for job opportunities and are living there. There you see the Prime Minister there reaching at one of the hospitals. He'll be meeting some of those who are injured there, who are admitted. There are several hospitals in which people have been admitted. Remember, Mamata Banerjee, the West Bengal Chief Minister, has visited the accident site earlier in the day. She had raised questions about rail safety. Naveen Patnaik, Odisha Chief Minister, was there early in the morning. Truly tragic event there at Balasore. One of the worst rail accidents, not just in the last 2 decades, but in the history of independent India. One of the worst railway accidents, ranks in the world perhaps in terms of death toll and in terms of the enormity of the derailment and the collision that turned out there. Remember, over 1,200 passengers in each of the trains, we believe, are there. Large amount of casualties, primarily from the Coromandel Express, which travels from Kolkata to Chennai. Prestige train, an extremely important route there. We are still trying to determine the exact sequence of events that led to that accident. I believe we are joined by our correspondent Megha Prasad as well. Megha, thanks so much. What are you hearing in terms of sequence of events? Is there any clarity on exact timeline of how this accident took place? To Megha Prasad in a bit. Remember the train number 12841, the Coromandel Express, which usually leaves from Kolkata at 3:20 p.m. And goes towards the MGR, Purachitaraivar MGR railway station in Chennai, earlier called the Chennai Central Station, is the one train that's involved in that accident. Just recapping information for those who have been tracking this. All this we've repeatedly put out several times. The Sir M. Vishweshwaraya terminus in Bengaluru's Baipanahalli, the other train, originated there and it goes to Kolkata. The Shalimar Chennai train and the Bengaluru Kolkata train, both cross tracks, meet around the same time at the Balasore district's Bahanaga Bazar railway station. We've been getting you field reports there. There's a goods train also that was involved in that collision there. There you see those images on your screen. Massive collision there, and on the left side of your screen you have the Prime Minister there visiting one of the hospitals. The Prime Minister was there at the accident site a short while ago to take stock of the situation. The entire focus right now is on medical assistance and ensuring enough resources and supplies for those who are injured, several of them critically injured in hospitals around the area. And the other main priority is to reach out to the families of those who have died, reunite families which are possibly separated in this massive accident in different hospitals, and ensure that there is support for the trauma that they're going through emotionally as well as physically and financially, that all families are going through at that stage, all those who were there in that train. Then after that, the priority is also to clear those tracks of those mangled debris. That's what we believe is already started in process there. You have several cranes there which will have to come and remove those trains, the bogies, those mangled bogies from those tracks to clear the track. I believe we are now joined by Megha Prasad. Megha, any update you can give us about the sequence of events that took place that led to the tragedy? We believe we're still trying to get through to our reporters who've been tirelessly covering this event since this accident and this tragedy since last evening. I'll try and get you more information as we head along. NDTV's Divya had also through a graphic plate explained how this tragedy took place and how the accident could have taken place. We'll try and play that for you in a bit. But remember, the key questions here are: how exactly did the Coromandel Express end up in that situation? Did it derail and collide with the goods train, or did a collision cause a derailment? And then how did the Yashwantpur, the Bangalore-Kolkata train, the one that's coming from Baipanahalli in Bengaluru to Kolkata, how did that collide with those mangled bogies? We do know that the train from Baipanahalli in Bengaluru to Kolkata came later and had collided on the bogies which had already scattered the track that it was on. It was train going up towards Kolkata, and the Coromandel Express was going down towards Chennai. How did the Coromandel Express bogies derail? Did it happen after the collision? So these are questions that are being asked. Is it a human error? Is it a technical fault? What about anti-collision devices, railway safety? These are very serious questions that have been asked. Let's just take a look at what NDTV's Divya has for us in terms of the sequence of events that led to this collision.
3-train collision. There you can see this train which changes tracks. Now there's just no clarity at the moment whether it changed tracks because the train was about to derail or because there was a technical glitch. You see, it changes tracks. Now when it starts to change tracks, it comes and hits this freight train, and that's where it starts to derail. It gets on top, it derails, and 5 coaches of this train derail. And because of which the other train which is coming from the other side, because of the coaches that are derailed here, about 2 coaches of this train also are derailed. The impact is felt over 17 coaches, and of course 900 people have been injured in this collision that took place, which involved these 3 trains. And the tragedy is that 260 people have died due to this collision which took place in Balasore. Do remember that train that was coming from Howrah, and the other train which was in fact it was going towards Chennai. The other train was also coming from the opposite direction. It was coming from Bengaluru. It was going towards Howrah, and that is when that collision took place. That change of track, why did that train, the Coromandel Express train, change tracks? Was there an issue? Was it getting derailed, and which is why it changed tracks? Or was there a technical glitch which is why it changed tracks and moved in the direction of this freight train which was parked on the track? So there you can see that caused the derailment, and which is why the coaches were derailed, and therefore the oncoming train was also derailed because of this collision.
Right, remember, we are still waiting for railway officials and the district railway officials as well to submit a preliminary report which categorically details how the events happened. There is still a lack of clarity on what exactly happened there at the Bahanaga Bazar railway station, just near that Bahanaga Bazar railway station. We believe this was very close to that railway station. We've been getting all those field reports from there. The Kolkata to Chennai Coromandel Express, that's train number 12841, departs at about 3:20 p.m. from Kolkata, Shalimar station in Kolkata, and heads towards Chennai. It reaches the Bahanaga Bazar railway station around 6:55, 7 o'clock. the Bengaluru to Kolkata train, which is one from the Sir M. Vishweshwaraya terminus in Bayapanahalli in Bengaluru. This used to originate from Yashwantpur railway station earlier. Now it's been changed to the Sir M. Vishweshwaraya terminus, a newly constructed one at Bayapanahalli in Bengaluru. The train originates from there, and that train goes towards Howrah in Kolkata. Now that train leaves at about 10:35 a.m. the previous day from Bengaluru and would have been close to reaching Kolkata in about 4 hours from that station. So the passengers at the end of their journey there in that evening. Around 6:55 p.m., the Coromandel Express derails. We are still not clear at the moment, and we'll have to wait for railway officials to detail that out in terms of how exactly this sequence of events panned out. Did the Coromandel Express collide with the goods train? How did it come on the same track? Did it have to switch tracks? How did that derailment take place? And then the SMVT Bayapanahalli to Howrah train was passing by on the up track at that same time and collided into the bogies of the Coromandel Express, which are strewn out there. We have officials at the Southwestern Railway in Bengaluru who are saying that most of the injured, in fact all of the injured, are from the Coromandel Express and none of them from the Yashwantpur bound train, from the Bangalore train that departed from Bangalore were injured. We're still to confirm that from higher officials there. A team of people from Tamil Nadu, ministers, IPS officers, IAS, have been sent by the Tamil Nadu Chief Minister to help people who are from Tamil Nadu in that, and others as well, at that accident. Remember, that train from Kolkata usually carries several migrant workers from northern states and northeastern states towards Chennai for work. There are also a high-profile train where several passengers who travel between Chennai and Kolkata use that as well. Same goes for the SMVT Bayapanahalli to Kolkata train as well. So we're still trying to ascertain the exact sequence of events, but at the moment, and obviously we'll have to wait for railway officials to come out with those details, these sequence of events will tell us very clearly as to what could have caused the accident. Of course, that is the post-analysis at the moment. The big focus there in Balasore district of Odisha and in other parts of Odisha as well is attending to those who are injured in that accident. About 900 people, according to the Chief Secretary of Odisha, were injured. Several of them could be critical at this stage. The Prime Minister there in Balasore as well, he's visited one of those hospitals. Those images that you see on your screen are that of the Prime Minister meeting victims at those injured at a hospital and relatives. I believe we can go across to Saurabh Gupta live from the location. Saurabh, you were detailing issues for us. Just tell us what's happening around you at the moment. What's the next course of action that's being taken there? And in terms of reaching out to relatives of those who are injured or dead, what's the update on that?
Well, at this point, really, a lot of bodies have been pulled out today, but most of those bodies have been, of those who've died in the debris in the wreckage of the train collision. Right now, with the railways, believing that most of the rescue work from inside the coaches is done, the focus is now to get back the track in service. So one of the first tracks they will get back into service is the track that's on this side. You can see, of course, the coaches on that side, and some NDRF personnel obviously are still looking for people who may be trapped inside those coaches. Obviously, chances of finding any survivors alive in that debris, in that wreckage rather, is very, very nil. But obviously, you continue till you can. And at this point, really, the railway is also now focusing on trying to get this track back in service. Because remember, this is a main line. It's the connectivity between Chennai and Kolkata, the railway connectivity. This is the main track. And you can see on the other side, if I can ask my camera person to show you, a crane has arrived. This crane is part of the operations to clear the track. Now that these coaches have gone all over the place, jumped on, climb, on top of a goods train, they need to be removed and the tracks need to be restored. So right now the focus of the railway authorities, once this search for people ends, is that to try and rescue, to try and restore railway connectivity, and that's something that the railway authorities will try and do in the shortest possible time, because the holding up trains means also a problem, and a lot of trains have been cancelled today and yesterday, given that this accident took place and the tracks was practically blocked and there was no way the trains could run. So that's the latest from Bahanaga in Balasore district. The railways are working now on a war footing to restore rail connectivity.
Saurabh, could you just take us through how far you are away from the Bahanaga Bazar railway station? What's the nearest spot where you have access to equipment, resources, hospitals, etc. from the accident spot? If you could just take us through the geographic area that you are in at the moment.
Well, about a kilometer from the national highway, there is a road that comes in, and that, of course, leads to a level crossing. And that level crossing is where Bahanaga Bazar station is. So it's 1 kilometer from the highway. But, if you go to Balasore, where the district hospital is, that's about, I think, 25 odd kilometers. Soro on the other side is nearer, but Soro has a smaller hospital. Then you have Bhadrak, which is the next big town. So nothing is nothing is within 10 kilometers. So everything is beyond 10 kilometers. So even from here, if you have to travel to the nearest hospital, it's at least 10 kilometers. The district hospital, though, is about 26, 27 kilometers away, because I did go from here to the district hospital, and it's quite a distance. And, so that is, of course, something that really can be woven to the reportage on this, tragedy, because this is not really a station that's quickly accessible, in terms that there is, of course, a motorable road, and ambulances are coming right up to the station. They're, taking away bodies from there. The cranes, the other machinery that the railways have brought in are all coming through the road. But the nearest possible urban, health center or the district hospital really is in Balasore, 728 kilometers away from. A little less than that, and then Bhadrak, which is about a little more than Balasore, perhaps.
Right, thanks very much, Saurabh. We'll keep coming back to you, and as I mentioned earlier, it is an enormous toll for those part of the rescue effort and relief effort there, the NDRF teams as well as reporters there covering that event, an enormous drain physically as well as emotionally. We'll keep coming back to you for updates on that, but thank you so much for detailing the exact geographical location, Bahanaga Bazar railway station, and from there, it's about 1 kilometer from the Bahanaga. Around that same level crossing is where the accident has taken place. And from there, that's where the other hospitals around Balasore, as well as in Cuttack and other places, is where they've rushed all the injured there. The Prime Minister there in one of those hospitals visiting those who are injured. I believe we're joined by by NDTV's Megha Prasad as well. Megha, in terms of the exact sequence of events, there still seems to be lack of clarity. We just heard Saurabh point out that the Coromandel Express could have derailed and then hit the goods train, or did it hit the goods train and derail? And how did the exact nature of events play out in terms of this accident? Do you have any clarity on that?
Well, so before I come to that question of yours, and perhaps, an explanation to that effect would be better with a diagram that the government has, the railways for their own consumption had made. We've been able to access that diagram. So perhaps in a while, we'll put that diagram up and explain to you exactly what has happened. Now, before I get to that question of yours, Veera, let me just give you a little bit of information about Prime Minister being there. We just saw visuals of him, finishing his stock-taking exercise at the site of the accident in Balasore. He flew in there. He was there briefed by the railway minister, by the other top officials of the railways who are there at the site. Dharmendra Pradhan also there, hails from Odisha. So Prime Minister was there, understood things from the technical team there. But after that, he's visiting the hospitals in Cuttack. So there are a couple of information that we need to put out. Of course, two things from the site of the accident. Prime Minister spoke to two important people. One was the Cabinet Secretary and the other, the Health Minister. Prime Minister's, to them, the instruction was to ensure that the injured in various hospitals across in that area get every single help that they require in this hour of need. So they are attended to properly and completely. On the other hand, he has also given very explicit instructions to ensure that those who have lost their lives, their families, their next of kin, do not face any inconvenience when the handing over of the mortal remains happens. And that, because the number is big, and we've seen those very horrific visuals coming in through the day, it is going to be a bit of a chaotic situation because, identification of the bodies will also have to happen. So Prime Minister has spoken to these two officials because the bodies will be handed over from the mortuaries in the hospital. So the Health Minister was spoken to, and for every other logistical help, the Cabinet Secretary was spoken to. And this is what the Prime Minister has said. He said that special care must be taken to ensure that the bereaved families do not face any inconvenience and those affected keep getting the assistance they require. He has also emphasized that the whole of government approach needs to be put in place. So every department who can help in a situation like this will have to come on board. They're already on board, but perhaps, with Prime Minister's visit there, you would have more agencies being roped in to ensure that as speedily as possible, things are sorted out here. Now, having said that, let me come to the question you asked, Veera. The question is, what exactly happened? There are multiple versions that have been coming out since yesterday from experts, from officials who were there on the site, etc. But now the sources in the Railway Ministry have chosen to give out what, according to their preliminary investigation, really happened. And this is, I'll of course come back later to you with the diagram, but let me quickly make the viewers understand what has happened. Here we are talking about 3 different tracks, and this is as per the railways, the officials of the railways and their investigation. We are talking about 3 different parallel tracks. In the middle track was the Coromandel Express that was speeding at 125 km an hour. The signal was green. It was at full speed. On one of the tracks, it was the Howrah Express that was simultaneously crossing the Coromandel Express. So at the same time, both the trains were crossing each other. And on another side, it was a stationary goods train it was just there. The stationary goods train was standing on a track next to the Coromandel Express. So Coromandel is in the middle. On one side is the Howrah Express crossing. On the other side is a stationary goods train. Now, Coromandel, at its speed that it was going, derails. What is the reason for the derailment? It is still to be investigated. It derails as per the railway officials. The minute it gets derailed, at that very moment, the engine and a few bogies of the Coromandel Express actually fly and hit the stationary goods train. That is how you see it on top of the goods train, the mangled area that you have seen, the engine on top of the goods train and some of the other bogies. On the other hand, the last 2 bogies of the Howrah Express were passing by the Coromandel Express when this impact happened, when this derailment happened. And then 2 of the bogies flew and hit the Howrah train, the last 2 bogies of the Howrah train that was passing by. That is how the 3 train got involved. Now, as per the railways, they are of the opinion is that the derailment has happened of only 1 train, while 3 train actually got involved because of the impact of that derailment. Right. That is their preliminary investigation. Whether Coromandel Express actually changed tracks and hit the goods train, that is an area which is still being explored, which is still being investigated. And what is the reason for this massive derailment is still unknown.
Very important, Megha. Thank you so much for bringing that clarity across. It's very important what you're pointing out, that the Coromandel Express and the other, which also explains why all the casualties are in the Coromandel, passengers from the Coromandel Express, and there are no casualties of passengers, according to at least officials in Bengaluru, of the train that left from Bengaluru, which was going towards Kolkata. When I look at the timelines on the timetable of the that's put up on the IRCT website as well, Megha, I think the Howrah-bound train, that is the SMVT Baipanahalli to Howrah train that was going in, was perhaps slightly delayed. It may not have had to cross that same time at the same stretch if it was on time. It may have been slightly delayed, was beyond its time. And the Coromandel Express, of course, only about 3-4 hours ago left from Kolkata and was heading towards Chennai. So thanks so much for that clarity. We'll keep a close track of this, Megha. You stay with us. We'll put some more of those questions to you, and perhaps you can give us clarity from what you're hearing from railway officials, as well as we will keep a track of Prime Minister's visit there to hospitals. We believe he will be visiting more hospitals as well. There he's meeting those injured in those hospitals. As Megha pointed out, the real focus and priority now is medical effort there and reaching out to relatives of those who have died and those who are injured there. We'll keep a close track of all that here on NDTV. We'll take a short break now, but our live and continuing coverage will continue after that break.
Brought to you by...
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The News with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. Only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, Building a Blueprint for Climate Action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right, and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television.
यहाँ के प्रशासन के सभी अधिकारियों का, जिन्होंने जिस तरह से इस परिस्थिति में अपने पास जो भी संसाधन थे लोगों की मदद करने का प्रयास किया। मैं यहाँ के नागरिकों का भी हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूँ, क्योंकि उन्होंने इस संकट की घड़ी में चाहे ब्लड डोनेशन का काम हो, चाहे रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन में मदद की बात हो, जो भी उनसे बन पड़ता था करने का प्रयास किया है। खास करके इस क्षेत्र के युवकों ने रात भर मेहनत की है। मैं इस क्षेत्र के नागरिकों का भी आदरपूर्वक नमन करता हूं कि उनके सहयोग के कारण ऑपरेशन को तेज गति से आगे बढ़ा पाए। रेलवे ने अपनी पूरी शक्ति, पूरी व्यवस्थाएं रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन में आगे रिलीफ के लिए और जल्द से जल्द ट्रैक रिस्टोर हो, यातायात का काम तेज गति से फिर से आए, इन तीनों दृष्टि से सुविचारित रूप से प्रयास आगे बढ़ाया है। लेकिन एक दुख की घड़ी में मैं आज स्थान पर जाकर के सारी चीजों को देख करके आया हूं। अस्पताल में भी जो घायल नागरिक थे उनसे मैंने बात की है। मेरे पास शब्द नहीं है इस वेदना को प्रकट करने के लिए। लेकिन परमात्मा हम सबको शक्ति दे कि हम जल्द से जल्द इस दुख की घड़ी से निकले। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि हम इन घटनाओं से भी बहुत कुछ सीखेंगे और अपनी व्यवस्थाओं को भी और जितना नागरिकों की रक्षा को प्राथमिकता देते हुए आगे बढ़ाएंगे। दुख की घड़ी है, हम सब प्रार्थना करें इन परिजनों के लिए।
तो प्रधानमंत्री That's Prime Minister Narendra Modi there speaking at one of those hospitals which he visited the injured there. He was at the site of the accident a short while ago. The key thing Prime Minister saying, commending efforts that are being taken at that stage in terms of rescue earlier and now relief as well for those injured in that massive human tragedy there in Odisha. He said, I have no words to express my thoughts, and he said he will pray to God for strength for all to recover from this massive tragedy there. Megha Prasad still with us. Megha, take us through what you're hearing. Obviously, the priority right now there will also be to reach out to the families of those in that unreserved compartments. In every train tragedy that we've seen over the last 3 decades, the key focus has always been those who are in those unreserved compartments, because you don't have contact details reaching out to their families. They come from villages across the board. That would be a major concern and priority for the government as well.
Yeah, it would be. But you heard the Prime Minister essentially underline their priorities. And priorities are 2. Number 1, of course, is to ensure that those who've been injured get all possible help. And number 2 is this, that as far as the investigation is concerned, and if there at all is wrongdoing on whoever's part, those will be brought to book and severely punished, is what the Prime Minister said. I think the biggest takeaway from what he has just spoken to Doordarshan there after visiting the crash site and also meeting those injured at the hospital is this. This is the big information that we are, of course, now sharing, which the Prime Minister said, is that those responsible would be found out and severely punished.
Right.
So clearly that is there in the mind of the government, the way they are progressing with the investigation.
Megha,
they need to find out who was responsible for this. And this is the question that we've been asking since morning, who is to be blamed.
Megha, sorry for interrupting you. We cut live into the Prime Minister's statement there a short while after it began. Let's listen to the whole of what the Prime Minister said at that Balasore hospital. We'll play that soundbite for you again now.
और वेदना से भी परे मन को विचलित करने वाला जिन परिवारजनों को इंजरी हुई है, उनके लिए भी सरकार उनके उत्तम स्वास्थ्य के लिए कोई कोर कसर नहीं छोड़ेगी। जो परिजन हमने खोए हैं वो तो वापस नहीं ले पाएंगे, लेकिन सरकार उनके दुख में, उनके परिजनों के दुख में उनके साथ है। सरकार के लिए ये घटना अत्यंत गंभीर है। हर प्रकार की जांच के निर्देश दिए गए हैं और जो भी दोषी पाया जाएगा उसको सख्त से सख्त सजा हो, उसे बख्शा नहीं जाएगा। मैं उड़ीसा सरकार का भी, यहाँ के प्रशासन के सभी अधिकारियों का, जिन्होंने जिस तरह से इस परिस्थिति में अपने पास जो भी संसाधन थे लोगों की मदद करने का प्रयास किया, मैं यहाँ के नागरिकों का भी हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूँ, क्योंकि उन्होंने इस संकट की घड़ी में चाहे ब्लड डोनेशन का काम हो, चाहे रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन में मदद की बात हो, जो भी उनसे बन पड़ता था करने का प्रयास किया है। खास करके इस क्षेत्र के युवकों ने रात भर मेहनत की है। मैं इस क्षेत्र के नागरिकों का भी आदरपूर्वक नमन करता हूं कि उनके सहयोग के कारण ऑपरेशन को तेज गति से आगे बढ़ा पाए। रेलवे ने अपनी पूरी शक्ति, पूरी व्यवस्थाएं रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन में आगे रिलीफ के लिए और जल्द से जल्द ट्रैक रिस्टोर हो, यातायात का काम तेज गति से फिर से आए, इन तीनों दृष्टि से सुविचारित रूप से प्रयास आगे बढ़ाया है। लेकिन एक दुख की घड़ी में मैं आज स्थान पर जाकर के सारी चीजों को देख करके आया हूं। अस्पताल में भी जो घायल नागरिक थे उनसे मैंने बात की है। मेरे पास शब्द नहीं है इस वेदना को प्रकट करने के लिए, लेकिन परमात्मा हम सबको शक्ति दे कि हम जल्द से जल्द इस दुख की घड़ी से निकले। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि हम इन घटनाओं से भी बहुत कुछ सीखेंगे और अपनी व्यवस्थाओं को भी और जितना नागरिकों की रक्षा को प्राथमिकता देते हुए आगे बढ़ाएंगे। दुख की घड़ी है, हम सब प्रार्थना करें इन परिजनों के लिए।
Right, the Prime Minister there sending out a strong message that no one will be spared for a tragedy of this magnitude as expected, sending out his condolences as well as praying to God for strength for the families and others to recover from this tragedy as well. Remember, he says, I have no words to express my thoughts at this moment. We're joined now by S. Ramakrishnan from Thiruvananthapuram, a railway expert who's tracked railways very closely. Mr. Ramakrishnan, from the initial reports that you have been seeing, what one hears that the Coromandel Express was at a high speed at the Bahanaga Bazar railway station in Balasore. We're still not completely certain on whether it collided with a goods train and derailed or whether it derailed and collided. And then at the same time, the train from Bangalore to Howrah was crossing on the other track, and some bogies of the derailed Coromandel Express hit the other train, and those bogies in the other train as well derailed in this thing. The large impact of this has been on the Coromandel Express. What do you make out of the images that you've seen and reports that you've been listening to on this tragedy?
Yeah. First thing is I am Thiruvananthapuram Ramakrishnan, not Thiruvananthapuram.
Okay.
So that's a correction. And the second thing is, it is not very clear whether the train that is moving from Bangalore to Howrah first derailed and then on which actually the Coromandel Express hit, or the Coromandel Express derailed first and then train from Bangalore to Howrah has hit on that. Because everything has, all these things happened in within 15 minutes, 12 to 15 minutes time. So it is not very clear. Only the investigation will tell us the sequence of events that has happened there actually clearly. My understanding is that in the third line, the goods train was standing or moving, and some of the coaches have when they have derailed have fallen there also, and that also has created impact on that. So this kind of accident has happened around 30 years. The similar kind of accidents has happened around 30 years back in Maniyambadi, if my memory is right. And there also one train has derailed and then left the coaches have fallen on the next track, and the other train came and then hit there. So this is a kind of unique accident. Normally when the derailment happens, there the matter ends, but this time the derailment happens and within a very short time the next train came and rammed it.
Right.
So
Mr. Ramakrishnan, tell us what happens in an investigation of this nature at this stage. Can you just take us step by step on how an investigation comes through? By when would we have clarity on exactly what happened, and what are the potential possibilities that could have resulted in this?
Yeah, the Railway Safety Commissioner is responsible for carrying out the investigation. To be neutral to the whole process, the Railway Safety Commissioner Office is being paid by the Ministry of Civil Aviation, not by the Railways. Okay, so they will be paid only by them, and they don't have to report to the railway board or railway ministry for that matter. They are independent body. Railway Safety Commissioner and his office is independent body, and they will carry out the investigation thoroughly, step by step, on by not only looking at the site but also doing forensic studies on the materials that are left out on the tracks. So they do the complete study, and it may take at least a month or so for them to come out with a good report.
Right.
So, and then based on which actually the cause of the reason will be known.
Okay.
Exact cause of the reason will be known.
So, would you say that the key questions right now in terms of investigating and finding out what really happened, at least to have a preliminary and cursory understanding of the sequence of events, would be that A, did the Coromandel Express derail and collide with the goods train, or did it collide and derail with it? Was there a switching? Is that possible in terms of tracks? We believe that's one of the questions that's happened. Could it have been a signal error? Would you believe that these are the three main questions that need to be answered on whether it is a human error, whether it was a technical fault, or whether it was just an accident that was caused because of some other reason?
Yeah, you are right, absolutely right. They will consider all the possibilities, even including the possibility of sabotage that might have happened, because even if you, if the rail is cut for a small distance, even for half meter or 1 meter, the train can derail, and it would have resulted in a sequence of events. So they will investigate into all aspects, starting from sabotage to the signal failure, to the human, whether the driver has jumped the signal and then passed on that. So everything will be investigated thoroughly by this railway safety commissioners, and the railway safety commissioners are capable of clearly identifying. They are well trained for this purpose, and they are capable of coming out with the real reason behind that without any ambiguity. So that is what they will do normally. Right. They will not leave anything ambiguous at the end of the investigation.
Right. They'll have to probe all angles.
It's not like a railway. It's not like. Yeah, they will put all the angles, and they will clearly say what it is. It's not like a air accident, this could have happened, that could have happened, no. Right. Here actually they will be able to do it thoroughly.
Okay. Mr. Ramakrishnan, we'll have to take a very short break in this, but thanks so much for putting those details out. Of course, there will be questions raised about the anti-collision system, the absence of it in that line, several other serious questions about railway safety itself, on whether we need a technical upgrade, which we definitely do, according to many experts on that matter. We'll keep coming back to you, Mr. Ramakrishnan, for more details on this. We'll take a very short break. Live and continuing coverage here of that tragedy continues on NDTV.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story. India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and centre, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and centre with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back.
You're with our live and continuing coverage of that massive train tragedy in Odisha. Well, the focus all on Balasore at the moment in terms of what's being done to restore the tracks, reach out to the families of the victims, both the dead and also medical effort for the injured. Megha Prasad has all the updates. Megha, take us through all that's happening there in Balasore at the moment.
Right, so a couple of information which would be very useful for people who are traveling in that area and also to understand exactly what's been going on. Of course, we know that the Prime Minister has been overseeing the relief and rescue operation since last evening. From the time this accident happened, he was one of the first people to have tweeted, and it's only then we got to understand that, you know, there are many who've lost their lives because till that time it was not clear. Now, what we know is that since yesterday, the relief and rescue operation, which was being carried out by the NDRF, by the army and the state government, is now completely over. So they have moved over. The relief and rescue is completely clear. There are no more bodies trapped inside, is what the authorities are saying. The focus is now completely shifted towards taking care of those who've been injured and they are in the hospital. So I'll get you that information. But as far as restoration of the lines are concerned, what we are being told is that, you know, there's an up line we are dealing with and a down line we are dealing with. So as far as the down line is concerned, that the railway officials are saying that it will be cleared in the next 12 hours. As far as the up line is concerned, which is badly affected, there is no time limit. At this moment, the railway officials are unable to say how long and perhaps how many days it will take for them to do that restoration completely and fully. Now, as far as the trains are concerned, the specifics are these. 58 trains have been completely cancelled. Short termination of 10 trains have happened. So essentially 68 trains stand cancelled as on today. 81 trains have been diverted. Now what the railway officials are expecting is that, once the down line begins, at least the train on that route will start moving. So that, these cancellations, the number will go down perhaps tomorrow and so on and so forth. Now, several thousand people, of course, who've been thousand people affected in the sense that these are the passengers of the trains who got cancelled or the trains who got diverted. Specific information here, the Chairman Railway Board and other important and top officials of the railways have been given the mandate by the Prime Minister to look at the injured. That's the only mandate they're dealing with. So the Chairman Railway Board is at Cuttack and in the nearby hospitals, and the General Manager of South Eastern Railway is at the Balasore hospitals and in that area. The restoration is being overseen by the Railway Minister, Mr. Ashwini Vaishnav. Member Infra of the Railway Board is taking care with his team, is taking care of the restoration, and of course the ex-gratia 10 lakh is being given by the centre. State governments will be announcing their own, but 10 lakh to those who have lost their lives.
Right, thanks very much, Megha. Important details there that you point out in terms of trains that are delayed. Some would have been terminated before their services. We expect another 24, 48 hours before there comes to a semblance of normalcy there in that area, on that very major and important line there. We'll take a very short break. Our live coverage continues of all that's coming out of Balasore and other parts on that massive tragedy. Stay with us.
Brought to you by...
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The News with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. Only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers. Part
Hello and welcome. You're watching NDTV 24/7. The big developing story that we are tracking and that we have been tracking all day, in fact, here has been the tragic rail accident in Odisha's Balasore district. And the latest figures that we're getting are that at least 288 people have been killed in this tragic accident and around 900 people have been injured, and many of them are critical and they're serious. Remember, those injured had been rushed to a nearby hospital in the Balasore district, and this is being seen as the country's deadliest rail accident in more than 20 years. Now remember, the Prime Minister has visited the site of the accident and he also visited the hospital at which those who've been injured were rushed yesterday. Remember, he took stock of the situation. He was also briefed by senior railway officials there at the accident spot. Very significantly, the Prime Minister has said that those responsible for the incident will be severely punished. Of course, the focus now is on the relief and medical help that is being provided to those injured. Remember, many of them critically ill, and they're all there at that Balasore hospital. As far as the rescue operations are concerned, remember, all night yesterday, massive rescue operations took place. Every resource was mobilized to make sure that those who were feared trapped are taken out, and we saw the NDRF teams, State Rescue Department teams on the ground, and their operations went on for the entire night and early morning today. Remember, the Prime Minister also chaired a review meeting early this morning, and he reached the spot, he reached the accident site at Balasore, and he took stock of the situation and significantly said that those behind the incident will be punished, and he also said that our prayers are with the family of the deceased.
असह्य वेदना मैं अनुभव कर रहा हूं और अनेक राज्यों के नागरिक इस यात्रा में कुछ न कुछ उन्होंने गंवाया है। जिन लोगों ने अपना जीवन खोया है, ये बहुत बड़ा दर्दनाक और वेदना से भी परे मन को विचलित करने वाला, जिन परिवारजनों को इंजरी हुई है उनके लिए भी सरकार उनके उत्तम स्वास्थ्य के लिए कोई कोर कसर नहीं छोड़ेगी। जो परिजन हमने खोए हैं वो तो वापस नहीं ले पाएंगे, लेकिन सरकार उनके दुख में, उनके परिजनों के दुख में उनके साथ है। सरकार के लिए ये घटना अत्यंत गंभीर है। हर प्रकार की जांच के निर्देश दिए गए हैं और जो भी दोषी पाया जाएगा उसको सख्त से सख्त सजा हो, उसे बख्शा नहीं जाएगा। मैं उड़ीसा सरकार का भी, यहाँ के प्रशासन के सभी अधिकारियों का, जिन्होंने जिस तरह से इस परिस्थिति में अपने पास जो भी संसाधन थे लोगों की मदद करने का प्रयास किया। मैं यहाँ के नागरिकों का भी हृदय से अभिनंदन करता हूँ, क्योंकि उन्होंने इस संकट की घड़ी में, चाहे ब्लड डोनेशन का काम हो, चाहे रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन में मदद की बात हो, जो भी उनसे बन पड़ता था करने का प्रयास किया है। खास करके इस क्षेत्र के युवकों ने रात भर मेहनत की है। मैं इस क्षेत्र के नागरिकों का भी आदरपूर्वक नमन करता हूं कि उनके सहयोग के कारण ऑपरेशन को तेज गति से आगे बढ़ा पाए। रेलवे ने अपनी पूरी शक्ति, पूरी व्यवस्थाएं रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन में आगे रिलीफ के लिए, और जल्द से जल्द ट्रैक रिस्टोर हो, यातायात का काम तेज गति से फिर से आए, इन तीनों दृष्टि से सुविचारित रूप से प्रयास आगे बढ़ाया है। लेकिन एक दुख की घड़ी में मैं आज स्थान पर जाकर के सारी चीजों को देख करके आया हूं। अस्पताल में भी जो घायल नागरिक थे उनसे मैंने बात की है। मेरे पास शब्द नहीं है इस वेदना को प्रकट करने के लिए, लेकिन परमात्मा हम सबको शक्ति दे कि हम जल्द से जल्द इस दुख की घड़ी से निकले। मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि हम इन घटनाओं से भी बहुत कुछ सीखेंगे और अपनी व्यवस्थाओं को भी और जितना नागरिकों की रक्षा को प्राथमिकता देते हुए आगे बढ़ाएंगे। दुख की घड़ी है, हम सब प्रार्थना करें इन परिजनों के लिए।
रेलवे का एक सिस्टम है, कोई इंसिडेंट होने से वो लोग 15 लाख रुपया करके देता है, एक 10 ना 15 10 देता है, अभी 10 देता है। हॉट स्टेट का जो आदमी मर गया, हॉट स्टेट तो उसको मदद करेगा। फिर हमारा स्टेट से ज्यादा है, हम भी वो परिवार को हमारा स्टेट का जो है 5 लाख करके हम देंगे। और रेलवे के साथ, गवर्नमेंट के साथ, उड़ीसा गवर्नमेंट के साथ कोऑपरेशन करके रेलवे के साथ हम पूरा काम करेंगे जब तक काम खत्म नहीं होगा।
So remember, not only the Prime Minister but also the Railways Minister was also present there. Other than that, the Chief Minister, Mr. Naveen Patnaik, was also at the spot at the accident site. So top politicians of the country really going there and taking stock of the situation. But what actually happened and what are the loopholes as far as railway safety is concerned? To talk more about that, I'm joined by Professor Anil Gupta, who is the HOD of Policy Planning of the National Institute of Disaster Management. Thanks so much, Professor Gupta, for joining us on the broadcast. My first question to you really is that now, there are larger questions on railway safety as well that are coming up, given the fact that it involved 3 trains and 288 people have been killed in this absolutely tragic accident. What do you have to say about, the vulnerability of certain sections of the railway, given the fact that, the Eastern Railways is seen particularly as vulnerable? So what are really the, if I have to ask you, what really are the top 3 loopholes, if you have to point out, as far as our railway system is concerned? Professor Gupta, I think you're on mute. If you could unmute yourself.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So Vedant, very important point, and this is very critical as well, because India's railway network is one of the biggest railway network globally, and also if we look at India's population. So in any kind of incident, the vulnerability of people, besides the vulnerability of system, also becomes an important aspect that is witnessed by this incident. This incident has been a rare kind of incident, where 3 trains, so a very different kind of scenario. Basically, triggering event was a smaller one, but it gave rise by cascading effect to a major catastrophic kind of a scenario. If we talk about what are the areas of improvement, so I would divide in both. I would divide in two aspects. One is technological dimensions, and second is operational dimensions. So basically, we'll have to look at both the dimensions with equal weightage, because now we are talking about the high-speed trains, and we are going to transform the railway system from speed point of view. So, but if we look at the operational dimensions, so there a huge need is there for improving our capacities. Capacities in terms of not only having the electronic gadgets of monitoring and early warning, but also what is the level of the precision and operability. So basically, that is also very important. That how sound decisions are taken, and not only the decisions are taken, but also communicated very fast, and that is very important. So even a single minute or even the fraction of minute is also valuable when any kind of transport which is a high speed transport is involved. Second thing is that this incident is rare, so it also gives rise to significant lesson. Most of the time we have been focusing on natural hazards, because the most catastrophic challenges were presented by the natural disasters like cyclone, the floods, these kind of incidences, bearing the COVID-19 kind of disaster. But this has presented that no, we have to give equal focus not only to natural disasters, but these kind of technical hazards, where in fact we say that our standards should look at the zero tolerance kind of things.
Right, and
So
Professor
this
Gupta,
is the
if you can also talk about the likely causes of this particular rail accident, because as you also rightly pointed out, it's a very rare accident involving 3 trains, a goods train and 2 passenger trains. What could have been the likely cause of this particular accident?
See, it would not be very appropriate to give a final kind of a verdict that what has been a final cause, because the inquiry has already been commissioned, a probing has already started, and probing will come out with the real cause. And I think the railway administration is going to look at this issue very, very seriously. At prima facie, what appears, and that has been explained by many people also, that the derailment, and then the another train coming on the nearby track, and the third train that was parked. So basically, the three trains were part of this in creating this scenario. And since the train was a high-speed train, so that also added to the risk. So basically, when we are moving from the conventional system to a more precise system of our efficiency.
Right, Professor Gupta, and that point you were making about the likely cause of this particular rail accident, of course, a probe is underway, and the Railway Ministry has also assured that they will come up with a report with the likely cause of the rail accident. Thanks so much, Professor Gupta, for joining us on the broadcast. Moving now, our focus on NDTV really is on the human cost of the rail accident, the hundreds of people who've been killed and their families. Now, remember, it's not just the 288 who've been killed, but also the people who are in hospitals, many of them critically injured. My colleague Manish spoke to some of them at the Bhadrak hospital. Take a look.
Right now, we are in Bhadrak District Hospital here in Bhadrak town, in different hospitals. Altogether, 68 injured. They have been brought. They are undergoing treatment here. We will talk to some passengers. क्या नाम है, क्या हुआ था, बताइए.
ट्रेन चले बिहार से आए यहाँ से कैसे पकड़ गाड़ी कैसे पलटी हुआ, फिर हम तो बच के आया है.
घर वालों को पता चल गया?
हाँ, घर पता.
आपका नाम क्या है?
जितेंद्र सानी.
हाँ,
जितेंद्र सानी.
हाँ, कहाँ से कहाँ जा रहे थे?
हम लोग वहाँ शालीमार से चेन्नई के लिए जा रहे थे.
हाँ, क्या हुआ?
वही है, जगह का नाम तो मालूम नहीं है हमें. वो गाड़ी वो माल बोगी में इतना स्पीड में यानी ठोका है, ठोक के पलटी जा रही है। पलटी होने के बाद हम लोग कैसे कष्ट से निकले हैं उससे, कुछ निकाल तो नहीं पाए पर जान निकाल के आ गए।
आप निकले अपने से?
हाँ, निकले तो अपने से, कैसे कैसे करके अपने से निकले, बाहर आए, देखे हाल। उस टाइम हम लोग को चक्कर आ गया देख के ऐसा मुसीबत में, तो हम लोग थोड़ा बेखबर हो गए। उस टाइम वहाँ पे आदमी पहुँचा, वो लोग हम लोग को कहीं पे बैठाया, सुलाया, होश आया तो इधर लेके आए अस्पताल।
आप भी उसी ट्रेन में? क्या नाम है आपका? हाँ,
हमारा महेंद्र नाम है सर।
क्या हुआ था महेंद्र जी, बताइए।
देखिए सर, हुआ ऐसा कि हम लोग तो शालीमार से बैठ के चेन्नई के लिए जा रहे थे। अचानक से गाड़ी में थोड़ा सा आवाज आया, मिनट भी नहीं लगा, गाड़ी जो है पलटी उल्टी मारने लगे। 3-4 पलटी मारा। हम लोग भी अंदर में थे, बच्चे के सारे थे, कैसे कैसे की सब थोड़ा बहुत करके कोशिश करके अपना बाहर आए। बहुत आदमी अंदर में पड़ा था, फिर पब्लिक लोग जुटे अंदर से, फिर निकाल के बाहर, फिर गाया हम लोग का यहाँ लेके आए। अभी तो हम लोग ठीक ही हैं।
इलाज चल रहा है?
चल रहा है, चोट लगा है सबको।
अब यहाँ से क्या करेंगे?
जाएंगे, वापस जाएंगे।
वापस कहाँ?
घर जाएंगे, नहीं तो जहाँ जा रहे थे वहाँ जाएंगे।
आप लोग भी इसी ट्रेन में थे? क्या नाम हुआ बताइए? कुमार साहब। कहाँ के रहने वाले?
कोलकाता था।
अच्छा, क्या हुआ था बताइए?
वो था घर में आया था और राज्य में से काम किया था, वो आया था और रास्ते में पलटी कर दिया।
आप लोग उनके
था।
क्या हुआ बताइए?
ये हुआ था, गाड़ी बहुत जोर से स्टार्ट हुआ, उस टाइम गाड़ी टकरा गया, गाड़ी से गाड़ी टूट भांग गया सर, गाड़ी सब, आदमी इतना नुकसान हो गया। सही यार, कुछ नहीं।
आप लोग ट्रेन में साथ थे कि अलग? ये लोग साथ में थे, आप लोगों को कुछ नहीं हुआ? So there were a lot of people who were also in the same bogie, but they escaped unhurt. But of course, all of them are, going through. They are in a great deal of shock, and somewhere it will take some time to overcome the trauma. With cameraman Habib Ali in Bhadrak, this is Manish Kumar for NDTV.
So the entire focus right now is to provide medical aid to all those seriously injured. But the fact is that hundreds have lost their lives and their families torn apart in this tragic incident. We'll continue to track all the latest as far as this incident is concerned. And on the other side of the break, we'll also get you how the sequence of events actually played out, how this accident actually took place. Time for a short break. Be right back.
The top.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shobh, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया।
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. Only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. we're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening, not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shobh, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening, not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shobh.
Welcome back. The big story we've been tracking all day today on NDTV, the horrific tragedy, the rail accident in Odisha's Balasore district. Remember, it involved 3 trains. One, of course, was a goods train and 2 others were passenger trains. And various versions now coming out of what actually happened as far as this particular crash is concerned, because an extremely rare accident given the fact that 3 trains were involved. But now the preliminary probe report that has come out, that says that the signal was given and taken off for the up main line for train number 12841. Now this is the Chennai Coromandel Express. Now, this train entered the loop line, dashed with the goods train and derailed. And in the meantime, train number 12864, which is the Yashwantpur-Havra Express, that passed through the down main line and 2 of its coaches derailed and capsized. This is what the preliminary probe report has said. But the eyewitnesses' account, that is entirely different. That is a separate version. We tried to actually decode it for you as to how the exact sequence of event played out. Divya has this report.
3-train collision. There you can see this train which changes tracks. Now there's just no clarity at the moment whether it changed tracks because the train was about to derail or because there was a technical glitch. You see it changes tracks. Now when it starts to change tracks, it comes and hits this freight train, and that's where it starts to derail. It gets on top, it derails, and 5 coaches of this train derail. And because of which the other train which is coming from the other side, because of the coaches that are derailed here, about 2 coaches of this train also are derailed. The impact is felt over 17 coaches, and of course 900 people have been injured in this collision that took place, which involved these 3 trains. And the tragedy is that 260 people have died due to this collision which took place in Balasore. Do remember that train that was coming from Howrah, and the other train which was in fact it was going towards Chennai. The other train was also coming from the opposite direction. It was coming from Bengaluru. It was going towards Howrah, and that is when that collision took place. That change of track, why did that train, the Coromandel Express train, change tracks? Was there an issue? Was it getting derailed, and which is why it changed tracks? Or was there a technical glitch which is why it changed tracks and moved in the direction of this freight train which was parked on the track? So there you can see that caused the derailment, and which is why the coaches were derailed, and therefore the oncoming train was also derailed because of this collision.
So, well, as Divya was pointing out in that report as well, it's still, yet to be ascertained as to why the train got derailed and entered the loop line. But what do we actually stand to learn from this absolutely tragic incident? What are the systems that should be in place to prevent any such future accidents as far as railways are concerned? Remember, there's also a lot of discussion now on Kavach, or the shield, the anti-collision system that should be in place to make sure that the train driver is actually alerted to any such mishap well in advance. Now, Vasudha is joining us live with all the possible options that are there before the government to make sure that no such collisions happen in the future. Vasudha, over to you for that.
So could the Kavach have prevented the Odisha train accident, and why did we not have the much talked about anti-collision system? So nearly 20 million people in the country travel by trains every day, and Indian Railways is truly the lifeline of this country. And when there is no denying that rail accidents have only come down in the past few years, what happened in Balasore actually shows that a lot more needs to be done when it comes to the safety of passengers. So I was looking at some RTI findings from last year, and a major reason for train accidents seems to be derailments, and these happen due to many reasons, including technical glitches, human error, overused tracks, and most importantly, outdated signaling equipment. This is something that the opposition has also talked about. But there are broad measures that we could be taking, that the government could be initiating, the Indian Railways could be putting in place to at least prevent such collisions in future, or at least ensure that even if derailments happen, there is no loss of life. First is to start with improving the signaling technology. Now, the Railway Ministry has already ordered a probe into what might have caused this crash. And while this is going to take some time, there are primary observations that there are multiple versions to how this accident could have happened. And of course, we will get to know only when the probe report comes out. Now, was it a technical glitch, or was it a human error, or was it a signaling failure? This is something that we need to wait for. But the most important question here is, don't we need better technologies to prevent collisions? And there is this Kavach that the government is already talking about. Now, the Railway Ministry has been in the process of installing an anti-collision system. It's called Kavach across the country. Now, what does a Kavach do? It basically alerts the driver when a train jumps a signal, which is, probably the most important cause of train collisions. Now, railway officials are telling us that it is yet to be installed on this line. The system can alert the train driver. It can also apply brakes automatically and when it is activated, and basically tell you stop all trains within 5 kilometers radius and also take care of the adjacent tracks. So it reduces the burden on drivers and also helps them identify the risks that is ahead of them. When Ashwini Vaishnav, the railway minister, said that there is a possibility of just one error in 10,000 years, it got a lot of Indians excited, and that is why this technology is being awaited. Now, this is already in a trial phase in some parts of southern India, including Bidar and Namapalli and Ligampalli, which is next to Hyderabad. It is going to take some time to come to other parts of the country. We are told that early next year is when we can expect the same technology in Delhi, Howrah and Delhi, Mumbai rail routes. But with what happened in Balasore yesterday, we are also being told that there could be some sort of fast tracking of this project. And we also need these systems faster on high density routes to ensure safer operations. The third more important thing here is also, does our aging infrastructure need more attention? Now, when we look at our infrastructure in railways, it is a very large network and there are faults in tracks, there are maintenance issues, and we need better implementation of advanced technologies, and we need to replace outdated carriages. Somebody, a higher official in railways, was also telling me that the trunk lines in some of those stations like Chennai and Howrah also need doubling, and some sort of lack of maintenance is visible, which needs to be addressed. The eastern part of the country, of course, has always witnessed more and more railway accidents. If you see, Bengal, according to NCRB data, also accounts for the second highest number of train accidents, and the country's deadliest rail accident also happened in Bihar in 1981, when an overcrowded train fell from a bridge into the Bagmati River and we lost 800 lives. If you look at our recent past, last year in Alipurdwar, there was a similar collision and we lost about 9 lives. So this is an important, factor of concern. And lastly, we also need to invest more in R&D. There are countries in the West that use positive train control and automatic train protection, which actually help drivers make these decisions and reduce the possibility of human error. Before I wind up, let me also tell you that the budget allocated to Indian Railways was the highest last year, with Nirmala Sitharaman, Finance Minister, allocating over 2.75 lakh crore to Indian Railways, which is why more of these technologies need to be put in place faster, and non-utilization of funds needs to be addressed.
Right, Vasudha, very significant questions raised by you on the various loopholes in our railway system and the need to really modernize rail infrastructure. Thanks, Vasudha, for that. Time for a short break now, but on the other side, we'll continue to track the latest on the ground as far as this tragic rail accident in Odisha is concerned. Stay with us.
दुनिया में कुछ लोग कहते हैं और कुछ लोग करते हैं। जब कहा गया देश में सोलर पावर सफल नहीं।
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया।
So let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh, Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. and it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
Let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
The news with Sonia Singh. Monday to Friday at 8 p.m. only on NDTV 24/7.
The only side we're on is yours.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
In a deeply polarized world, where space for disagreement is shrinking, where take it or leave it defines discourse, we take a step back. A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center, conversations that get to the core of the debate. Left, right and center with me, Vishnu Shom, 9 p.m. on NDTV 24/7.
Debates are essential not just for journalism but for humanity. It ignites our mind, opens it up for counter-opinion. To hear all views, opinion of all hues. Which is why the oldest running debate show on Indian news television is not 23 years old, but young at 23.
इस इनिशिएटिव को मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं कि सच को सच के रूप में पेश करने का उन्होंने साहस दिखाया.
Let us begin the big fight.
This is NDTV. No noise, no shouting, and most importantly, no lies. Our lead story tonight. Big international story India is closely watching it. News that informs and inspires.
Welcome back. Our big focus on NDTV remains the horrible train crash in Odisha's Balasore district. Now remember, over 288 people have died in the crash and 900 people, at least 900 people are injured, many among them seriously injured. They're there in a hospital near the Balasore district. I'm joined by my colleague Saurabh Gupta live on the broadcast. Saurabh has been on the ground since early morning. Saurabh, take us through what's the situation on the ground. Of course, now the focus is on clearing the tracks because, as pointed out by the NDRF earlier as well, that the rescue operations are more or less, have been concluded. What's the situation on the ground?
Well, obviously, as the railways begin clearing the tracks, you can see the impact of that collision even more. Because if you see, if my camera person can zoom in here, just look at this mangled coach below the crane. The yellow, arm is of the arm of the crane, and this mangled coach, of course, is what the crane was trying to remove right now. And that is, of course, something. And if you see the coach next to it, the coaches have gone into each other. So anyone who's sitting there or sleeping there would have perhaps been trapped inside. So now, of course, after they've removed it partly, they're again looking to see if they can find more bodies inside which are intact, and then if they can retrieve them and send them for post-mortem or whatever. Because dignity in death is also something that obviously these rescue and missions look at. So this is something that they're doing at this point. But again, look at this side. You can see this green coach, the sleeper class coach, completely on top of another coach. The engine of the Coromandel Express on top of a goods train. The pillars or the poles that hold up the overhead electrification wires also completely uprooted. So at this point, really, the railways' focus is to try and clear at least one track, which they're trying to do at this point. One track they will clear, and then, of course, the rest they can slowly start. But at this point, their focus is at least clearing one track, which they're trying to do at this point, as you can see. So obviously, this is one of India's worst railway accidents. 3 trains piling up is something that's unheard of. Earlier, we've heard of bad accidents, including, let's say the Gaisal railway accident in West Bengal, in which the Brahmaputra Mail and the Awadh Assam Express were involved. Or, the Ganeshwari, in Jhargram, again in West Bengal, in which, the Ganeshwari coaches had derailed, and then, of course, a goods train rammed into it. But here, you had, the Coromandel Express derailing, ramming into a goods train, stationary goods train. And then, because the coaches were displaced and it infringed on the other track, another train coming from the other side also rammed into these coaches, and then that train also derailed.
Right, Saurabh, what you're reporting actually shows the extent of the accident and the extent of the tragedy, but also talk to us about the rescue operations, because you were there on the ground when they were underway and you were privy to it all, really. So talk to us about the rescue operations. I mean, we all saw those visuals of the NDRF teams extricating body after body, and really rushing the injured to hospital, to a nearby hospital. Talk to us about the rescue operations and how they actually managed to retrieve bodies and rush the injured to a nearby hospital.
Well, when one talks about a rescue operation, one cannot forget the role of the Odisha government in this. Of course, the NDRF has done a stellar job. Of course, the other agencies, the ODRAF has done a good job. But Odisha has very strong SOPs in place. This is a state that's handled one crisis after the another. It's handled cyclones. So they have very good SOPs in place. So when something like this happens in Odisha, obviously look at the way they've distributed patients across Soro, Balasore, Bhadrak, and other places, and I believe even till Baripada. So that's the way they work, so that, the load is not on one hospital. So these SOPs are something that they've worked and tweaked and worked on over time, which is why now they have a system where the machinery kicks in and each part does its job. And that's why perhaps, this rescue and relief operation, I would say, was one of the better managed ones that I've seen, because otherwise it can take months, I beg your pardon, not months, but at least a couple of days. But today is just 24 hours since the accident took place. In fact, it's now about 6, almost 7. Exactly around this time yesterday, the accident would have occurred here, and these trains would have rammed into each other. And in 24 hours, not only have you extricated most of the bodies, but also you're now already started work on clearing the track. So that's the kind of perhaps influence that Odisha has in terms of conducting rescue operations, and experience that Odisha has, and the expertise that the state has, which has also helped in the rescue and relief operations.
Thanks so much, Saurabh, for that ground report. And Saurabh has been there on the ground since early morning. Thanks so much, Saurabh, for joining us on the broadcast. And of course, our focus remains the horrific rail tragedy in Odisha. We'll continue to track all the latest developments on the other side of the break. Stay with us.